How was practice?
It was great. Excited, cold, but that's what November football is about, right?
Coach Grubb talked yesterday that communication has to be elite this week with Oklahoma's front. What role do you play in that with the offensive communication?
One, just making sure everybody's on the same page, whether it's play calls, checks, etc. And just making sure, right, that we communicate from, every standpoint of whether it's a shift, motion, everything else in general, right? Just making sure Parker's good and everybody up front is good as well.
Arch Manning, I think, mentioned sometimes you guys have exchanged tips before about facing certain teams. So what kind of things are you guys sharing, or what are those conversations like?
Arch has got a loud mouth, huh? No, that's my guy, right? Like, we talk weekly, just, not just about ball, but just like how each other doing. He's a really good friend of mine. But yeah, I know he played. Who did Texas play before us? They played somebody, and we had talked before. And then of course, right, the Red River rivalry, and it was a good game. So I asked him a couple questions, and he asked me a couple questions about Vanderbilt and about Georgia, right? Just kind of quarterback, etiquette, and just talking to one another, just about like, hey, what did you see? What did they do here? And just about plays and fronts in general, right? Just, stuff that we talk about, not just as friends, but, quarterbacks as well. So
Oklahoma only gives up 14 points a game. When you've looked at film of what they do defensively, what to you looks like they do so well?
Everything. That's why they only give up 14 points a game, if we're being honest, right? This is by far like the most, well coached, just disruptive defense that we've seen. Just how physical they are up front, how fast they are, how confusing they are in the back end, right? It goes all the way, credit Coach Venables and Coach Bates all the way back to Clemson, right? With those teams, and even when Bama was playing them in the championship, they do everything well. So we got to be very disciplined in our calls, our reads, our motions, everything, because we just need to make sure that everybody's on the same page and be as disciplined as we can.
There's a old coach's cliche that the horizontal passing game can be an extension of the run game. Is that something that you've always heard, or kind of take us through that?
Yeah, certainly, right. I agree. Getting the ball out in space and just quick throws, right, can open up a lot more space, right? Just because it gives the defense another thing to worry about. But I certainly think, right, that like any time that you get the ball out in space to skilled players and really good players, helps everything. Helps our pass game, helps our screen game, helps our run game. So anything like that can help everything.
Did that relationship with Arch begin at the Manning Passing Academy, or was it before that?
No, me and Arch have been friends for a very long time. I think we had to be in like middle school. We worked out together a couple times, right? And of course, we had a ton of respect for each other, just because of us being like one of the best quarterbacks, and how similar we are, right? We just love ball, and so we'll hang out outside of football. He's a nut. I could tell y'all some stories, and he could tell you some stories about me. But that's my guy. Like, ton of respect to him and his family, and his brother. Like, he's a really good friend to have.
What's your favorite Arch Manning story?
I can't tell you that on camera. There's a lot. I just when he came here, it was fun. It was like a movie, coming here and seeing him as a recruit, and then being at the the Manning Passing Academy, right, where he's kind of from. So yeah, we can't talk about it.
How many? Talk to John Mateer at all? Do you have a relationship with him?
Yeah, I know John. He was at the Manning Passing Academy as well, right? I didn't know him until then. Of course, I knew he was a baller at Washington State, right, in Oklahoma. Being there, and then my little brother, right, who's getting recruited by Oklahoma as well, and Coach Arbuckle, talked very highly of John. So we got to become friends at the Manning Passing Academy. He is a baller. He spun it great. He's just very athletic, right, just a great quarterback, and carries that offense. So ton of respect to John and what he does, and not only that, but he's a really good person as well. So a guy who I really enjoy hanging around.
What was your perspective from last year's Oklahoma game, watching on the sidelines, and what do you see maybe a carryover defensively from them last year to this year?
Just one, how disruptive they are, right? Like, they brought all types of stuff, right? Stuff that we hadn't seen coming off a bye, and that's what we expect this week as well. And just kind of like, hey, something bad's going to happen in this game, right? Just because it's a really good team, they're really good defense, really, really good coaches, right? So, we just need to understand that, like, we need to keep going, right? Need to be resilient, strong, have one and all mentality like we have done all year, and just understand that, like, we got to honor the game, right? Like, we compete because of, how fun it is, right? Because the game is hard, and so that's what we need to understand going into this game.
When you're facing an elite defense like this, how do you view the opportunity?
It's kind of, why we play football, right? It's why I came here, why I stayed here. Games where, no other place in the country gets to play as many, primetime games and against ranked opponents as we do, right? Each week is a new opportunity, a new challenge, and that's the beauty of it, right? Just being able to play like, a guy who across the ball is a future, first round pick or something like that, right? Or a coordinator who's known for being disruptive and stuff, just prepares you for the future, and it prepares you, to be the best version you can be, right? So, the fun's in the process, and being able to being able to look at what you did from last game, and then being able to just get better, right, and do it all over again, and then you enjoy playing and the competition. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
When y'all ran the double pass against LSU, Jeremy throwing to Brooks, you ran down the middle of the field with your hand up. Did you really think you were open, or was that more window dressing?
A little bit of both. He could have thrown it, he just chose not to.
When you go against the front as disruptive as Oklahoma's is, what does it demand of you as a quarterback?
I got to be very disciplined in my reads, very conscientious of how fast and quick they are, and the twists and turns, and I got to know where my outlets are every down.
Do you guys feel tested?
Yeah, we feel tested every week. Every week in the SEC is like a different test, right? Like a different opportunity, and we kind of tell ourselves, right, like, LSU last week, right? Like, they had nothing to lose. South Carolina the week before that, right? Like, everybody thinks that we're looking forward to the bye week. Like this week, right? It's a playoff type game. Just every week, right? We look for a new thing that people doubt us about, and not only is it true, but it's it helps us because it just gives us fire, and it makes us understand, like, this is what's at stake.
What do you think needs to happen for y'all to be able to have more success running the ball?
Like I said last game, right? It's a mental thing. Just understand that we can do it, and we have done it before. And then two, right? It just have a confidence in being able to understand, like, we got this game, we got the players, and just believing in ourselves and doing it. Like, that's all it is. And some technique issues, but we're going to be running the ball. Like, we'll be just fine. So I believe in I believe in our coaches, believe in our O-line, and believe in our running backs. Like, we're going to have no problem running the ball.
What are those conversations like? Go ahead.
I was going to say, does that same logic apply to the deep passing game and getting that going in terms of just it's between the ears more than anything else?
Right. Like, I take credit for it because sometimes I try to throw the most perfect ball instead of just putting it on him, or even just right, like how we attack things, right? It's just kind of part of it. So it's all a psychological warfare when it comes to that stuff. Like, we hit a bunch of deep balls just fine. We need to work on it, right? Like, we talked about one-on-ones, after the South Carolina game, right? And I think we hit how many last game, 3 or 4, right? Like, it's just building off the South Carolina game and stuff that we worked on in practice. So this week, right? What do you think we're going to work on? One-on-one balls, just kind of part of it. Understand what our weaknesses is, and our we do self-scout and keep going.
Can something like touch get in your head, or are you thinking about that at all when you're throwing in game?
There you go. No, we don't. I don't think about that at all, right? I just think about completing the ball. I think a little bit of it is, right, of like trying to, like I said, throw the most perfect ball instead of just making sure the ball gets caught, right? And I think that happens a lot. And I also think, right, like just being able to, react and not just, think this is going to happen, so I'm not worried about it.
Ty, when Coach DeBoer kind of seems like the guy who, looks forward, he kind of preaches what's next as opposed to looking back. Did it surprise you when he was like, I want you to remember what happened in Norman last year to those who experienced it? Did that surprise you at all?
No, right, because we did the same thing with Vanderbilt. We understand like how bad Norman in that game hurt us last year, right? Like not only did it, affect, what our future was, but it affected us as a team. And I think, everybody who was on the team last year, and, coaches as well knows, what happened in practice that week and how we viewed, how we were complaining or, whatever you want to call it, right? And we were going to make sure that, like, hey, this is the same scenario and same position that we were in a year ago. Like, are we going to, go the same route, or are we going to make sure that, like, it doesn't happen again? So, it starts on Tuesday, right, when we go out here and, it's 24 degrees when, we wake up in the morning, right? Like, no, like, we're going to, instead of working out or practicing inside, like, we're going to go outside. Like, we're going to go short sleeves and make sure that, like, we're ready to practice. We're going to go as hard as we can. So,
Awesome.
thank you, guys.